Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome to Live It Up, the show where we explore and discuss how to take your life to that next level and beyond. We cover health, wealth, relationships, and how to create a life you absolutely love. Fletcher is out today, so I am your host and coach today. And so we're going to take the opportunity to talk about healthy living with Meg Raines. And remember that health is the first wealth, so stick around. But before we get to that, I want to remind you that if you have questions that you would like us to answer on or off the air, you can email them directly to us at fletcher@fletcherellingson.com. If you feel stuck in an area of life, or whether it's financial or health or relationships, you can get in action and reach out. You don't need to suffer. There are answers and solutions and way to get unstuck and move forward powerfully. Alrighty, so Meg, welcome.
Thank you so much.
Meg has been on the show before with Fletcher, and she is one of our dear friends and very invested in health. And so I'm just going to go with our first question, and we're going to talk about this. So I know that you're very health conscious. You eat well, you exercise, you practice mindfulness, all the healthy things that we talk about in the show a lot. So have you always been like that? Or if not, was there something in your life that made you change? So just tell us your story about how you got so dang healthy.
Well, I grew up in a household with an older sister that was really health conscious. And back in the day, she grew up in the 60s, and that's when if you made granola, you were considered a hippie.
Yeah.
But she was really health conscious. And my mother had high blood pressure and high cholesterol. And so my sister was always talking to her about, eat this, don't eat that, you shouldn't eat that. And so I really got a lot of information from her. But also I saw that my mother, who wasn't taking care of herself, I saw the outcome of that. And I decided early on, probably in my 20s and 30s, that I really didn't want to do that because she ended up with dementia and Alzheimer's, and
that's terrible.
And so she spent 10 years in a nursing home, and so I decided I'm going to take care of myself now.
Okay, so it's really been something you've been doing for a long time. Okay. And then I know eating gluten-free is a change that you made several years ago, and I'm gluten-free as well. And so just wondering, we could talk about that. What caused you to make that change, and what have you noticed since making that change? Because I know a lot of people ask me about being gluten-free in my practice. There's different people I see with digestive issues. So I'd love to hear how that story was for you.
Yeah, so despite my efforts to be healthy in my 30s, somewhere around my mid-40s, I started getting really ill. And I had digestive issues and foggy brain and chronic fatigue, which really is no joke. I mean, it was awful. It was chronic fatigue. And I went to several doctors, had lots of tests, and they kept giving me different medicines, and nothing really felt right. And I went to a naturopath doctor who said, you might think about your diet. And he said, try eliminating gluten. And literally, when I walked out of his office, I said, I will no longer eat gluten. I had to try something. And I quit gluten, and in about 2 weeks, literally, I felt 100% better. I mean, it cleared up a whole lot of stuff. And so it got rid of the foggy brain, and I had a lot more energy. And from that moment on, I thought, wow, diet is really important. It's really, really important.
Yeah.
So that took me on a whole nother path.
That's awesome. I know for myself, I also went to a naturopath, and it's something as a family doctor, a lot of my patients are like, wow, you're so open-minded, that I don't just think that there's one way to do things, because I know myself that I have had times where I didn't feel good. And for me, I was having a lot of fatigue and achiness and sometimes heartburn, and then going gluten-free really got rid of all of that. And it's not, I think the one thing to talk about is that, there's a difference between being gluten intolerant and having celiac disease, where you actually literally, your body gets inflamed and reacts and has a reaction to gluten. That's different than like what you and I have, which is more of like an intolerance and other symptoms. We don't have like celiac sprue. And so I know there's a lot of information out there on the internet about this that, if people are interested, they could read about it. But it can make a really big difference. And people that I see that have, chronic heartburn or constipation or bloating, I will definitely have them try being gluten-free. Before we go to commercial, where do you usually get your gluten-free stuff?
Well, nowadays, a lot of stores, even mainstream stores, have a gluten-free section, but any health food store or online. But the really important thing is to make sure the package says certified gluten-free, because a lot of things say like oats, if they're not certified gluten-free, they might have a trace, and some people can be sensitive to that. So, so I just really look and read labels all the time because there's a lot of chemicals that have gluten in them. So you really have to look for certified gluten-free, and you can get just about anywhere, but mostly health food stores and grocery stores.
Yeah, I feel like the stores in our area all have gluten-free. I know Fred Meyer here in Wenatchee has a really great gluten-free section. All right, we are going to commercial, so stay with us. We'll be back in a minute. Welcome back, everybody. We're here today with Meg Raines talking about healthy living. I am your host today. Fletcher is out, so thanks for being with us. So I have a question, another question for you. So besides being gluten-free, you also eat mostly a plant-based diet. And I wondered why you made that choice and what difference it has made for you. And I know you took cooking, got certified in plant-based cooking, and that was really fun for all of us because we got to eat your food.
Right. So once I discovered that you can really control your health or make changes in your health through your diet, it was like the sky's the limit. So I tried a couple different things, and it turns out that I am also sensitive to eggs and dairy. And I realized, well, my body sort of wants to be not gluten-free, but plant-based. So I started eating more plant-based and experimenting, but the best thing about it was it's the most nutrient-dense diet you could have because all the nutrients and the macronutrients in food is really in plants. I mean, like green spinach and like just fruits and vegetables. And so if you want to optimize your diet or optimize your health, it's really a plant-based diet. And the best part about it is I can eat an abundance of food because I love to cook and I love to eat. And so it's really wonderful to be able to eat a large amount of food without feeling like you're dieting. And I had so much clarity and energy, but mostly I focus on whole foods. So I don't do a lot of processed foods that, say they're vegan. Anyway, so it really did make a huge difference in my health. On top of being gluten-free, I feel a lot healthier and more vibrant.
Excellent. Well, I feel like, again, in my practice that I feel most people definitely don't eat enough vegetables. And the thing about vegetables, if you think about the amount of calories and fat and this much of like a bowl of potato chips compared to what would calories and there'd be no fat, but except for what you put on it, of like broccoli, it's so different. So you could have a whole bowl of broccoli, like you said, and I know even though you're tiny, you do love to eat. Yeah. You can have a whole bowl of broccoli even with, avocado or nuts or seeds or other kinds of fats on it and still be much better off for your body than a bowl full of...
Yeah, think about all the nutrients you're getting versus potato chips. There's empty calories. Yeah,
and I think that the other thing, in something Fletcher and I were just watching, the point about protein, it's like, well, you need to get your protein from animal products, but where do you think the animals got all their protein? That was the question. Like, what did the cows eat to make their protein? I mean, they eat grass. So you can get so much protein from plant-based diet.
And elephants.
And elephants. Oh, you're
They're
right.
plant-based.
Yeah. And gorillas.
Yeah.
Right. So do you eat 100% plant-based now, or?
No, I'm not. I don't really subscribe to any diet. It makes me feel the best when I eat plant-based, but I'm about 95% plant-based because I don't stress if I eat any kind of animal product when I'm traveling, because when I'm stressing about food, it brings all the joy. It takes all the joy out of eating. And I know that a lot of people try to follow something and they start to get obsessive about it. And I was kind of going down that road, and I decided I'm not. And I'm just, when I'm home, I eat plant-based, and it's wonderful. I try to do as much as I can when I'm traveling, but I don't worry about it if I don't.
Yeah, I think that brings up a good point. You and I talked before the show about talking about trends in diet, and I think that it definitely, you watch a documentary, say someone watches a documentary, documentaries are definitely, they're usually one-sided because they're trying to make a point, and I love documentaries and you can learn a lot from them. But I think people, you see a documentary or you read a book that even has an MD on the cover, or maybe the MD wrote it and or collaborated, and therefore it's true. And so I think that that's really a trap. And I find that people ask me all the time about certain diets, and it's really difficult to do studies on a diet because there's so many variables. So even when they've done really big studies and look at which diet performs the best for diabetes, let's say, where they've looked at kind of high protein, low carb, Mediterranean. Those were the two that I remember being compared, and Mediterranean actually consistently does really well for people, and it's a really varied diet. And the Mediterranean diet has a really vast amount of foods that you can eat, and it's strongly plant focused, but then with fish in it. And I think eggs are in that one too. So I think it's really helpful for people to listen to their body, and to know what works for them. Because even if someone does really well with a lot of animal products, other people may not do well with animal products. So I think it's really good to pay attention to your body.
I definitely agree with that, because I feel like one size does not fit all when it comes to dieting, and you really need to learn how to listen to your body versus listening to the trend, or like you said, a book, because every person is completely different, and throughout different times in your life you need different things, and you really have to focus on how that works.
And I would say, I just thought to myself, like, well, someone might ask, like, well, what would you pay attention to in your body to know if a diet's right for you? And I would say a few things. Number one is sometimes you can retain water. You can get bloated when you're not on the right diet for your body. The second thing is mental clarity. When you're not on the right diet for your body, you may have mental fogginess. I think energy, sleep, and weight. And so if you notice that you gain weight on a diet, a certain way of eating, or you have any of those other issues with sleep, mental clarity, energy, and water retention, then that's probably not a good diet for you. If you react or digestive issues, if any of those are happening, then reconsider what you're doing.
And your skin also, considering that that's your biggest organ, whatever they say. But I always can tell when I eat something that my body doesn't like, because it does come out in my skin and my face. And so when your body has something in it doesn't like, it does tell you.
It's true. You just have to listen. I think a lot of people are so used to feeling maybe chronically fatigued, or they don't sleep well all the time, or they don't have a good digestive system. They may not even know what it's like to feel good. So I think it's really important to pay attention to your body. All right, we're going to go to another commercial. Stay with us. All right. Hi. Welcome back, everybody. We're here today with myself as your host, Amy Ellingson, and Meg Raines. We're talking about healthy living habits and diet. So I know one of the things you've been kind of dealing with and learning about the last several years is about how someone's diet affects kidney stones because of your husband's kidney stones. So I'm wondering how that's expanded your awareness about how much diet and water intake affects the internal chemistry of your body.
Oh my gosh, it's basically everything. I mean, it's astounding. I mean, I thought I was, managing my health and my life, and then my husband comes around, and he has a very rare disease called cystinuria, and he makes kidney stones. Long story short, he can't eat meat and dairy products because he can't absorb the cysteine in it. So it's 100% managed by diet, and so it works out that I'm a plant-based cook, and so it just happens to work out. But he has to drink enormous amounts of water and keep a low sodium diet, as well.
Really low sodium.
Really low, which he doesn't do quite so well.
I mean, most Americans eat so much sodium, as was he.
Yeah.
And so now it's like a teaspoon a day.
I know.
Is the ideal, right?
It's the ideal.
All salt in his day.
A teaspoon or less. But the thing is, I cook mostly from scratch, and so that makes it so much easier to control sodium, because when you go out to dinner or you get processed food, that's where all the sodium comes from. So I just use a tiny bit, and I make sure there's a lot of flavor, and he does really well with that.
I mean, but that even includes, I think you guys are finding even in store-bought breads, not to mention chips and crackers, which there's usually a lot of in people's houses, but also just store-bought breads have a lot of sodium. So unless you make everything from scratch, you're for sure going to go over a teaspoon a day.
Yeah, but the thing is, it's mostly water, but he's learning how to balance it, and this is new for him. I've been working on, tweaking my diet for years, but this is relatively new. And so I'm curious, do you see clients or patients that have issues with changing their lifestyle?
Well, for kidney stones, I definitely have seen them go to the urologist, talk about what they should do, and honestly, I don't think, besides maybe drinking more water, I've not seen people really do much for kidney stones, and they're really painful. But I think it really speaks to how difficult it is to change your diet. And so I haven't seen people do that. I mean, even with like take diabetes, which is the main thing that I see that's kind of diet related, or high blood pressure, high cholesterol. I mean, I don't know, maybe 10% of patients really make a big change in their diet. But it's interesting right now, we have a student in clinic with us, and she's a high school student in Brewster who wants to be a doctor, which is it's really fun having her there. She's a senior. And we were looking at lab work and just the fact, I know I always say on this show how amazing the human body is, because literally there's a range for someone's sodium within like 5 points is where your body keeps it, and chloride and glucose and liver enzymes and phosphorus and calcium. There's these tight ranges, not to mention your temperature, that your body is constantly keeping you in this narrow range of where it wants you. And so everything that you're doing that we're ingesting just dramatically affects your internal chemistry. Wow. And so I think people we're very I think we're just not connected to that as much. And so I think if you're suffering from any ailment, whether it's feeling like it's mental clarity or memory or anything like that, or sleep, digestive, all of that, it would do you well to think about, what am I eating and how is it maybe affecting me?
Right, and so when do you tell people to see a doctor?
Well, I mean, they're seeing me.
Well, I mean,
so
when would you recommend to somebody that if something is happening, it's time to see the doctor?
My office. I mean, I think that if you, I guess that's kind of a big question. I think obviously if there's like any alarm symptoms where someone's having, where they're sick, they need to see a doctor. I would say if, in my opinion, probably if it's more diet related, if you think it is, then I think seeing a naturopath is probably, or there are some food kind of coaches, I think, in the Wenatchee area. I think those people are going to be more well-versed than seeing a family doctor like myself. I think that, maybe getting some initial testing at a doctor's office is not a bad idea, just to make sure, your liver and kidneys and all of that is okay.
And you can take that to the coach and
or the naturopath and be like, hey, I've ruled out these mainstream things, these kind of allopathic things. What else could be going on that's more in the realm of, diet, nutrition, more of the natural things? So, I mean, I definitely recommend patients go see naturopaths when it's like I'm at the end of what I can do, and I think that they may benefit from it. So
nice.
All right, so let's talk about some common resources that you use to find new recipes.
Oh gosh,
since I know you, I already know the answer to this because I know what.
Pinterest. I love Pinterest. Pinterest is the biggest cookbook in the world, honestly. If you can find your groove with it and get all the things that you're interested in, honestly, I have all of these boards and you can organize it, and I literally cook from Pinterest probably 4 times a week.
Wow.
I love it. Yeah, it's really wonderful.
I can't do Pinterest. I know you know that about me too.
I do know that.
It's just too much. I don't know.
Cookbooks. I mean, there's a lot of cookbooks.
Yeah,
I'm
like old fashioned. I get cookbooks where I print off a recipe.
Yeah.
But so Pinterest, you get ideas on Pinterest.
So Pinterest is mostly where I get ideas. I also subscribe to a lot of bloggers, and I get recipes in my inbox all the time, and I use those as well.
What are some of your favorites for yummy plant-based? Because even like we've talked about before on the show or different venues, Meg and I have, that even if you're not wanting to go vegetarian or vegan, you still should have really like half your plate be vegetables at least for lunch and dinner. So figuring out a way to make vegetables taste yummy is always a good idea.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, even if you put a piece of meat on it or a piece of fish, a lot of people don't understand how to cook vegetables, which is why I took that culinary course. Because if you follow somebody that is plant-based, the majority of what they're cooking will be obviously plants, and so you get to add lots of flavors and different things in there, and you can add anything you want in there. But a couple of my favorites, there's a woman called Laura, and her website is The First Mess, she's wonderful.
I've not been in that one.
Yeah, she does a really great job. And of course, The Minimalist Baker. She has a lot of gluten-free and a lot of vegan and different kinds of plant-based things on there, along with other things. And there's so
Cookie
many.
and Kate.
Cookie and Kate.
Cookie and Kate. So the Cookie and Kate, Minimalist Baker, and The First Mess.
And The First Mess, and Blissful Basil.
Blissful Basil.
Yeah, she does a lot of baked goods, but there's so many.
And those are all websites people can go to.
Yeah, websites, and they send recipes to your inbox.
All right, that's cool.
Yeah.
Okay, and then what about what other resources do you use to find information about other health topics? Like, say, you hear something, or you get, you see something on the a headline, and then you're like, is that even true? How do you find the answer to that?
So much stuff out there.
There's so much stuff out there.
So yesterday I heard somebody say the internet is not an encyclopedia, it's a dump. And that is so true, isn't it? I mean, that you have to sift through the garbage to find the good stuff. And so I no longer believe everything I read. I make sure that I hear it from all the different sources that I trust. And then I do my own analysis, whether it's right for my body. I mean, there's all kinds of things about the keto diet, and sure, it might work for some people, and there's a lot of misinformation out there, but you have to bump it up against your life and really find the resources that aren't being paid by someone, that to advertise and make sure you're on the right. It takes a little bit of time to make sure you're on the right thing.
It definitely takes, I feel like, a lot of sleuthing, really, to figure out. I mean, I know myself, I can't keep up with it.
Yeah.
Like, knowing, what's true, what's not. And, you say, even, Dr. Gundry, I had heard about him, and he has that plant paradox, but then that's different from, Dr. Hyman, and there's just all these different things, and they're physicians, and they seem... You read their book and it's like, well, that must be the truth, and but then someone else says something different, and so it can be really difficult. I think.
I know, and there's a lot of doctors who say really, really, really low oil, like no fat.
Yeah, like Dean Ornish is very low fat, and they've had great results in cardiac patients, but that's really different than Dr. Hyman's food.
Right, but you have to think about I don't need low fat because I don't have heart disease. So you have to really think about your life. And so for me, I do moderate fat, but I mostly try to do natural fat. So you really, again, have to look. And so I'm curious to know what, as a doctor, do you feel like are good resources?
Yeah, I have a hard time even knowing how to answer that. I mean, I feel like Mayo Clinic, they have a lot of stuff online, and I really like their stuff. Harvard Health also has a lot of stuff online. So I would say... what
about WebMD?
I haven't spent much time on WebMD. I don't really know. I mean, I've gone to it sometimes, but it has so many ads. I think I just don't ever sift through it. So I would say Mayo Clinic, and then the Harvard, I can't remember if it's harvard.edu. I think those are two good resources. Yeah. And I think that the other thing that's important, like you said, is to bounce it off not only how you feel with it, but also if you have any, ethical reasons. Like, you just, bounce it like your value system. Or even your finances. So say Dr. Hyman, there's a lot of nuts in his, a lot. And that's a really expensive diet. Yeah. And so you can kind of look at maybe what you need to look at what works for you. Yeah. And even for how much time you have. So you want to have even like we talked about, an 80% of the time you eat as well as you can and be okay with that.
Yeah, 80-20.
Yeah. Well, it's been really fun having you here.
Thank you.
And hope you guys enjoyed this and learned something. And if you have any questions, like we said before, you can email us, and we can answer those questions. And I really believe that if people have knowledge, it's power, and you can be empowered to live the healthiest life you can. So take care. We'll see you next time.